Statement, Minister Jess Phillips.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and Merry Christmas. With permission, Madam Deputy Speaker, I will make a statement on the publication of the Government strategy to tackle violence against women and girls. But before I do, let's start with the facts. Last year, 1 in every 8 women was a victim of domestic abuse, stalking or sexual assault. Every day, 200 rapes are reported to the police, and many go unreported. Behind every one of these figures is a woman or girl whose life has been shattered. And behind every crime lies a perpetrator who all too often gets away scot-free. For too long, we have accepted these statistics as simply a fact of life. Today, this government says no more. We are calling violence against women and girls the national emergency that it is. We are committing to halve these horrific crimes within a decade, and today we publish the strategy that sets us on that journey. This strategy does something that none before it ever has. Until now, responsibility for tackling violence against women and girls has been left to only the crime-fighting departments, working so often in isolated ways, providing support that is vital, but often too late to truly change the story. This strategy is different. It deploys the full power of the state across national government and local government. It draws on the experiences of victims and the power of the third sector to transform our approach to these crimes in our schools, our police forces, from housing to healthcare, on our streets and behind closed doors, online and offline. This strategy is designed to deliver 3 goals. Firstly, preventing boys and men from ever becoming abusers in the first place. Secondly, bearing down on perpetrators so those who have offended do not do so again. And finally, supporting victims so that they get justice when they seek it and the closure that they deserve. I will start with how we stop the violence before it starts. Because of the proliferation of content with the potential to poison young minds, the needs have never been greater. Our strategy tackles radicalisation and confronts concerning behaviour long before it spirals into abuse or violence. Education is undoubtedly key. We must empower teachers to challenge harmful attitudes and act before they escalate. So, to do so, we will invest $20 million to tackle harmful attitudes in young people. Our universal pledge is to fundamentally change how relationship, consent and attitudes can be embedded through education. This means changing the curriculum, developing teacher and external provider training on healthy relationships and consent. We will also develop targeted programmes for those starting to exhibit harmful behaviours, piloting interventions in schools focusing in and managing the risk where abusive behaviours are already starting to show. We will provide parents and frontline professionals with the support and training they need to spot the warning signs of misogyny and act on them. We will also make the UK one of the hardest places for children to access harmful content and misogynistic influences online. We must help our parents protect their children from harmful poison content. We will ban nudification tools which currently enable users to strip clothes and produce intimate images without the consent of those depicted. And we will work with technology companies to make it impossible for children in the UK to take, share or view nude images through nudity detection filters. First and foremost, our goal must be to stop these crimes from ever happening, and that means stopping anyone from ever becoming a perpetrator. But it also means bearing down on those who do commit these awful crimes. In this strategy, we set out significant new powers and tools to pursue these dangerous individuals. Today, police performance varies from force to force, with more than 2/3 of rape cases seeing a victim withdraw support in some police force areas. For that reason, by 2029, every police force in England and Wales will have a specialist rape and sexual offences team. Mirroring the approach taken by the Metropolitan Police, we will also ensure police forces use the same data-driven approach to tracking offenders that we apply to terrorists and serious organised criminals. New forensic technology will be used to track down rapists and sex offenders, allowing us to reopen cold cases and bring offenders to justice many years after they thought they had got away with it. We will ramp up our efforts to take perpetrators off our streets, and we will pursue them online too. Following the approach long applied to disrupting child sex abusers and acknowledging that violence against women and girls is increasingly happening online, we will deploy covert officers online to disrupt offending and bring criminals to justice. We must also do more to break the cycle of offending. Through the DRIVE project, we are investing $53 million in ensuring high-risk, high-harm domestic abusers are subject to intensive case management arrangements. And we will also roll out domestic abuse protection orders across England and Wales. Crucially, they can be applied for by a police officer or court, criminal or family. And unlike other orders, they do not rely on the victim to act. In the pilot locations alone, 1,000 victims have already been protected in this way. Now many more will be. Where crimes are committed, it is essential that we help those who have suffered get the justice they deserve, and as much closure as ever can be possible. I have spent most of my working life with victims of these crimes, and their voices have informed every decision that we have taken. We will be backing this strategy with over £1 billion in victims funding. This includes over £500 million for victims' services and another £500 million providing safe housing for victims of abuse as they escape their abusers. As part of this investment, we will support vital victims' helplines. We will set up new services to connect victims with specialist help through their GP and provide up to £50 million for therapeutic support for child victims of sexual abuse. In the short time I have today, I have only touched on a fraction of the measures in this strategy, one that signals in its entirety a transformation in the government's response, a government that is rising to the challenge of a national emergency that we face. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, before I finish, I would like to take the opportunity to thank all of those who have helped us get to this point. I am particularly grateful to my counterpart, the Victims Minister in the Ministry of Justice, in her integral role in developing the strategy, as well as to the Home Secretary, her predecessor, now Foreign Secretary, the Deputy Prime Minister, and last but absolutely by no means least, the Prime Minister and the team at Number 10. They have stepped up to the plate with leadership and ambition, and I thank them all. I would also like to thank all of those across government in different departments who I may have been slightly annoying towards at times, but have stepped up admirably, from the National Health Service to police forces, to all of my colleagues sat beside me on the front bench today. They have worked incredibly hard, and the incredible dedication of the third sector, who have long rightly called for the government to do more. Most important of all, I would like to thank the victims of these awful crimes, those I have met and worked with for many years, whose bravery and determination have and always will inspire me, and kept me going through what seems like a very long career when it too often felt like change was impossible. Without their support, this strategy would have been impossible. It is above all else for them. Madam Deputy Speaker, may I end by imploring those here and far beyond these walls. This strategy is more than a document. It is a call from a government that recognises this as a national emergency, a government that is willing to back up its words with action. Ending violence against women and girls is the work of us all. Those who might spot a young boy at risk of turning down a darker path, those who might see troubling signs of behaviour in their friends, or perhaps even themselves. It will take all of society to step up and end the epidemic of abuse and violence that shames our country. The challenge is great, but I have never felt more confident that we can rise to it than I do today, because change is coming. We can make women and girls safe at last, and I commend this statement to the House.
Sir Katie Lamb.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I wish you a very Merry Christmas. I'd like to start by thanking the Minister and the colleagues she has worked with for bringing forward this strategy today. Tackling violence against women and girls is a deeply noble aim, and one we very much share on this side of the House. Women and girls face particular threats, both in the home and at the hands of strangers. Previous Conservative governments fully understood this, which is why we took steps like setting up the Grooming Gangs Task Force, introducing measures to make it easier for victims to pre-record evidence in rape cases, and rolling out 700 more independent sexual violence advisors to support and work with victims through the police and court process. I'd like to pay particular tribute to my right honourable friends, the members for Louth and Horncastle and for Staffordshire Moorlands, for their work in leading the efforts of previous governments on this issue, and to my honourable friend, the member for Rutland and Stamford, who I know is looking forward to working collaboratively with the government on next steps after she returns from maternity leave. But the work of keeping us all safe is never done, so I would like to further welcome the steps taken in this strategy to continue and enforce a lot of that work, particularly those steps to ensure national coverage of specialist rape and sexual offence police teams, to apply new forensic technology to cold cases, and to roll out domestic abuse protection orders. Truly protecting women and girls demands that we have difficult and sometimes awkward conversations. Conversations about sex and consent, about private lives and criminality in the home, and about who is committing these crimes and why. Relationships between men and women, relationships
forward as part of this 10-year plan. One is that young boys, in particular as young as 11, can be referred to specialist care and sort of advice centres, sort of taking in advice from specialists inside schools, taking in advice from the outside to provide classes for young boys to stop harmful behaviour developing early. They also want to introduce specialist training for teachers, so inside schools with the mandatory requirement, but by the end of the decade, all secondary schools will have this specialist training to try and spot those early signs of damaging, harmful, potentially misogynistic behaviour. There was another announcement in there as well around image-based abuse, so saying that they want to work with tech companies to ban what they're calling nudification tools, so the development of AI basically turning images of real people into fake or nude images without permission and then sort of sharing them around. Remember, the statistics help explain why the government are looking to do this. We had some policing statistics out the other day saying that half of all child sexual abuse and exploitation offences are being committed by teenagers, by children between the ages of 10 and 17 years old. So that's why the government are really looking to clamp down on early warning signs on particular young boys inside schools and asking teachers to spot those signs and refer them onto the classes that they perhaps need. But the government are also clear that in order to tackle violence against women and girls, in order to halve it within the decade, they want to stop what's happening now. They want to stop, as they're calling it, abusers. The scale of what confronts their target is massive. You heard those statistics referenced by Jess Phillips, the safeguarding minister there, that around 1 in 8 women in the last year were a victim of domestic abuse, sexual assault or stalking. So they're promising things like specialist investigation teams in police forces by the end of the decade, and also better care and protection for victims within the criminal justice system. We hear so often, don't we, that victims don't feel that they're properly supported, that actually much of the care that they're getting isn't what's known as sort of trauma-informed, asking victims to repeat their accounts, repeat their stories. Better action as well on things like domestic abuse, so harsher prison sentence for breaching of protection orders. So it's sort of three-pronged, if you like, one on prevention, one on stopping abusers, and one in improving the system for victims of abuse. In terms of how it's going down so far, well, I think broadly that they've been welcomed, the plans have been welcomed. Everyone recognises that more intervention work is needed, and perhaps earlier, but there is a fear, particularly
subject to individual choices and preferences. It went on to argue that an emphasis on women's bodily autonomy can therefore be traumatic to those of other cultures. This is wrong. Individual autonomy is the bedrock of our laws, our culture and our country, as I'm sure all of us in this House will agree. So finally, will the Minister please join me in affirming that whoever you are, wherever you may have come from, wherever your family may have come from, and whatever may have happened to you, if you are a woman in Britain, your body belongs to no one but yourself.
Minister.
I thank the Honourable Lady, and in the list of people who put in effort over the years in this regard, I think as well I would like to make a special mention of Baroness May, who I worked with for many, many years on many of these issues. In answer to the Honourable Lady's questions, with really specific answer about data, she is absolutely right that currently data collections on a variety of different issues have been neglected for quite some years and are not good enough, and issues around how we collect, whether it's ethnicity data or other forms of data that will inform this strategy, are vitally important. And as somebody who has been a pro-choice member of Parliament and a pro-choice advocate my entire life, I am more than happy to stand here and say that it is a woman's right to make any decision, and I hope that always the Honourable Lady and anyone would join me in telling anyone from anywhere, including when they are of our own ranks and our own communities, that it is nobody else's business what I do with my body. And so I'm more than happy to say that. What I would also say to the Honourable Lady is that this government has deported an increased number of foreign national offenders, 12% increase since her government's period in office, and has passed much stronger laws, for example, on the rights of asylum seekers. For example, I believe that members opposite voted against the bill that contained this, to not be able to claim asylum in our country. But what I would also say to the Honourable Lady was, if the only crime that I had to concern myself with halving was that was committed by people who arrive in our country, my job would be considerably easier, because the vast majority of the data that I am talking about is around people who were born in our country, abusing other people who were born in our country, from every culture, from every creed. There is absolutely, I have yet to come across any community where violence against women and girls does not happen.
Sarah Owen.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I of course welcome the new Vawg strategy and thank both the Victims Minister and the Safeguarding Minister, who have worked so hard and are wholly committed to ending harm against women and girls. On specifically training for teachers, will this be co-designed alongside girls and boys, so it's well received and up to date with the latest technology? Because big tech has a huge role to play in tackling misogyny. Children online are constantly targeted with information including violent pornography or hateful content. And we say, don't look, but the algorithms are screaming at them to look. Our committee found that the tech companies like X, Snapchat and TikTok continue to freely publish misogyny. Will we see this government get tough with big tech over their failure to protect children?
Minister.
I thank the Honourable Lady, and she is absolutely right when she characterises the kind of violent pornography that young people have been exposed to. And I am part of the strategy will be to ban strangulation in porn, amongst other things that I'm sure when everybody goes away today and reads the strategy around some of the guidance that comes from the review that was undertaken into pornography and exactly what we have to do. I am very pleased to say that since age verification came in July, that Pornhub has seen a reduction of 77% in its traffic. My heart bleeds for them. So we are seeing actually the green shoots of this, but she is absolutely right. The strategy tackles head on how we have to work with, and whether that's regulation and or collectivism with tech companies to make sure that the kind of vile crimes that we see happening to children in our country cannot happen anymore.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Marie Goldman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Minister for advance sight of her statement today. Madam Deputy Speaker, I warmly welcome the Government coming before the House today with this much anticipated violence against women and girls strategy. It's essential that we tackle this issue head on, and to do that it's vital that we don't just talk about dealing with the horrific consequences of violence, as the Minister has said. That alone is not good enough. We must not accept a system that tells women and girls to expect violence and abuse, but promises support after their lives have been irrevocably harmed. Training for teachers is a welcome measure, but unless it's also accompanied by steps to properly moderate online content, there is no doubt in my mind that it will fail. As long as violent, misogynistic content continues to reach children and adults online, this crisis will persist. I have no doubt that the Minister knows this. I would ask her to go further and faster in tackling the devastatingly harmful effect of online content right now. Children are being harmed right now. We need tougher action right now. We were told that the Online Safety Act would make a difference. It has not. Now Ofcom has released guidance that we are assured goes further, but this is voluntary and any strengthening will only come in 2027. That is too late. Without clear legal enforcement, social media companies will continue to put their profits first. So I ask the Minister, will she commit to holding social media companies properly to account? And will she ensure that Ofcom's guidance on violence against women and girls becomes mandatory with enforceable duties and real consequences for failure now, not in 2027? And finally, for this strategy to succeed where multiple others have failed, it must also include ring-fenced funding for specialist services, including for older victims. It must work comprehensively across government departments, recognise minority women may experience violence differently, and have clear accountability if progress stalls. Can the Minister set out how this strategy will deliver on each of those points?
Minister.
I thank the Honourable Lady, and actually I think that she will see from the strategy that yes, absolutely, the issue of tech is undoubtedly in there, and I agree with her that assessing how well things are going seems quite a long time to wait till 2027. I can absolutely guarantee her that I will hold tech companies accountable, as I think it's quite famously known that quite a lot of them aren't that keen on me, that I will hold them accountable for their behaviours and work, but also work with them in what is possible. Like to the previous question that I was asked about it, whether we make sure that what teachers know is to adapt to a modern world, I have to say we're going to also need big tech brains on that as well. And so whilst I will hold them accountable, it is also going to be very important to work with them. There is absolutely ring-fenced money that is really specifically about targeting both domestic abuse and sexual violence within this. And one of the things in the strategy is absolutely to commit to how we give the standards of commissioning when we give out money from the centre down to areas to look at exactly the issue she is talking about with regard to buy and for in whether that's older people, veterans support for black and minority ethnic groups. All of these buy and for groups will have to be taken account of.
Stella Creasy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank all the ministers for all their collective hard work working with the Safeguarding Minister. It has been worth the wait for this strategy. She will know that for too long it's been an occupational hazard for women in this country that they get hassled wherever they go and whatever they are doing. So can she confirm that as part of this strategy, the Prevention from Sex-Based Harassment in Public Life Act will be come into force in April next year, meaning for the first time ever, the law will recognise that misogyny causes crimes against women and girls, and the police and courts will be able to do something about it. She will know that Citizens UK, the brilliant Sue Fish, our streets now, the former member for Tunbridge Wells, Greg Clark, and the current member for Tunbridge Wells, and I have been pushing for this for over a decade because we want to see women and girls as free as men and boys to walk our streets. So can you tell us how we can now feed into the police guidance on this matter, please?
Minister.
Absolutely, I can confirm that, I'm more than happy to meet with the Honourable Lady and others that she has mentioned about exactly what goes into the guidance. What we always have to make sure of is that we don't just write nice words on goatskin in this building, that we actually make them workable in the real world, and I am absolutely keen that everything in the strategy does that.
Robbie Moore.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I absolutely welcome the publication of today's strategy, and I do share the Minister's ambitions on early intervention. But in constituencies like mine, one of the greatest failures of the state has been the historic failure to openly and honestly confront perverse cultural attitudes behind violence and abuse against women and girls. I think of the women in my constituency specifically targeted because they were working class white girls, and I think of the many women who I've met who have poor English, little education, and don't know about their rights or how to access support. And I also think of those many women I have met in my constituency too scared to raise those concerns. The Minister rightly speaks of challenging misogynistic attitudes within schools, but can she assure me that this strategy will not stop at the school gate and that the government will challenge any institution, whether religious or otherwise, that continues to reinforce harmful attitudes towards women and girls and put their safety at risk?
I absolutely can confirm this. I would challenge the strategy not only is about challenging institutions, whether that's children's services across the country, police forces, the court system. We have tried in the strategy to look at wherever a person might come forward or have previously been failed, and look at ways that we can seek to improve those. Now, that you don't undermine, frankly, millennia of patriarchy overnight. But if only I'd do it if I had a magic wand. But I absolutely, I don't care what it says above the door of your establishment. If you are not working with us, you are working against us.
Jess Phillips.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I would like to make the House aware of my appointment as the Vawg Advisor to the Secretary of State for Health, and it is the commitments made by the Department for Health in this transformative strategy that I wish to raise. Will the Minister confirm that the rollout of the Child House model represents a significant step in delivering against Recommendation 16 from the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, and that the introduction of Steps to Safety service, which will embed specialist support workers across groups of GP practices, will play a huge role in better identifying victims of domestic abuse and sexual violence through these settings?
Minister.
I absolutely will confirm that, and first and foremost welcome my honourable friend. I don't really need to welcome her to the party. I'd say for about a decade she and I have been in the same meetings together before she was in this house working in the sector. I absolutely can confirm this, and I think that, you know, government departments standing up and saying we're going to put so and so million into this. The thing that I want to highlight about the measures that are in the strategy that she has spoken about is the cultural shift that has come from the idea that not just ministers saying it's everybody's business, but the Health Secretary with other members of the Cabinet going, OK, what does it's everybody's business mean? And I thank that the Health Secretary for making that mean that he understands that if you are raped, if you are stalked, if you are harassed, if you are domestically abused, that makes you sick, and that they have a responsibility to deal with that. And the idea that every child in the country will now, where they live, have access to what can only be described as a gold-plated system that currently exists in Camden and some other places across the country, frankly, makes my heart sing.
Dr. Luke Evans.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I've long argued in this House when it comes to mental health or physical health, it's women and men, not or, and that's really important. So can I welcome this strategy coming forward, but I also bring a sense of caution, because terms like toxic masculinity, labelling men or young boys is potentially a real problem, because they see themselves that they are destined to cause some problem, and already some of the reporting today is enhancing that. So what is the government doing to make sure that we are not already criminalising socially young men and boys for having feelings about good masculinity? That's a really important definition the government needs to get right, and I'd appreciate her answer on that topic.
I totally agree, and I'm not a fan of the term toxic masculinity. As somebody who has raised two men, I used to be able to say I had children, but I have raised two men. They're very tall, and I have watched over the years, since the Me Too movement started to occur, then the death of Sarah Everard, and a real pouring out of emotion by women in our country that didn't include men and boys in the conversation, and so they went somewhere else to get their information. And so much of the strategy is about inviting those young men and boys in, but also men and boys who are victims of these crimes. Today they're in the news, the terrible cases of sextortion for all to see. And my honourable friend will be holding a men and boys summit, and there is a men and boys section to statement as part of the strategy. It is vitally important that we get this right, because we've tried the alternative before and it didn't work.
Yeah. Andy Slaughter.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We're all aware of the delays in the criminal justice system. These can occur at any stage, but are particularly severe when cases move from the police to the CPS and then to the courts, each under a separate Department of State. What mechanism, or better still, individual, would ensure joined-up government in tackling violence against women and girls, and doing so quickly and effectively?
Minister.
I thank the honourable gentleman, and actually the backlog in our courts is one of the stickiest, most difficult issues, and covers across lots of different government departments to get this absolutely right. And it is, I would say, it's probably the thing that the problem that drives our collective work almost more than anything else, because there are thousands. We are due to have 100,000 in the backlog by 2028 if we do not do real radical change, and keeping at the heart of that radical change the experiences of women and girls. And there's things in the strategy around legal advice for victims, around greater support for independent sexual violence advisors. All those sorts of things are there, but this is going to take a radical change.
Monica Harding. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I pay tribute, first of all, to the Minister for her work on violence against women and girls? Can I also welcome what she said to my honourable friend about her commitment to holding tech companies to account for their behaviours? However, during the passage of the Online Safety Bill, the Minister and her colleague, the Minister for Victims, who was also instrumental in the development of this strategy, were at the forefront of calls for a code of practice to protect women and girls online. Now that they are in government, why are they not delivering on it? It's in the government's gift to amend the Online Safety Act to make Ofcom's guidance the code. With the best will in the world, guidance won't make any difference to social media companies' behaviour, nor their profit-driven models, which are the source of so much misogynistic influence, and teachers are now being expected to deal with it. So why is the government afraid to use all the tools at its disposal to hold tech firms to account for their role in fuelling misogynistic behaviour?
I thank the Honourable Lady for her kind words and her reminder of the many years of passing the Online Safety Bill, which many of us will remember, I would about say fondly, but I'm not sure that's necessarily always the case. First and foremost, to say I wouldn't be afraid of doing any of the things that she has highlighted. What I would say is that the Online Safety Act, which, and the Honourable Lady was not here, took 10 years to get to the legislative place that it was, and it has only actually really been rolled out since July this year. The government repeatedly has said, and what it says in the strategy on this, is that where we need to go further, we absolutely will.
Helen Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for her statement and warmly welcome this strategy? And can I pay tribute to my honourable friend, the Minister, for delivering this strategy and for her years of personal commitment to the safety of women and girls. I welcome in particular the focus on educating children about misogyny and driving misogyny out of our schools. My honourable friend will know that the Ofsted inspection framework has previously been largely silent on the issue of misogyny, allowing examples to occur where schools have been able to be rated outstanding despite girls at that school having a widespread experience of sexual harassment and abuse by their peers. So can I ask my honourable friend what engagement she is having with Ofsted to ensure that all of the government's objectives are aligned and that no school where girls are routinely experiencing regular misogynistic harassment and other behaviours can be regarded as exceptional, strong standard or expected standard under the new framework?
I thank the honourable lady, and the government has released new curricula on healthy relationship education, and we're working with Ofsted to ensure that schools are monitored against the delivery of that. Is frankly one of the most important things that you can do, because just saying that they have to have it and then not ever looking at whether it's any good, I think has led to a hodgepodge and frankly some terrible behaviour in the country. But I absolutely take away her point and will go and speak to my colleagues in the Department for Education, who are a fundamental pillar. I'm starting to talk like a civil servant, they say pillar about everything, pillar in this strategy, to look at exactly what she is talking about, and to make sure that if that was found to be the case, that school, well, if a school isn't safe, how could it be outstanding?
John Glenn.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I welcome the publication of today's strategy and acknowledge the commitment of the Minister over many years to get to this point. It must be a great moment for her. A few weeks ago, I visited Salisbury Seroptimists, who published a document called Fresh Thoughts, which was an information document taken from Dorset, customised for Wiltshire, giving information to support women fleeing domestic abuse in Wiltshire. She's working closely with Wiltshire Police, Wiltshire Council and Wiltshire End Violence Against Women and Girls. When I go back and tell them about this strategy today, would the Minister indicate how best they can engage with it to build on the work that she has set out?
I thank the honourable gentleman, and as I said, the strategy will die and fall on everybody taking part in it, and he's given me the perfect opportunity to pay real credit to seroptimists from all over the country. Some of the work that appears in the strategy around having specialist advocates for rape victims in court started because of volunteer programmes run by seroptimists in part of this country. So I want to give them the confidence that actually they can change government policy, and that they can work through your good offices to reach out to me, but they do amazing work in their local communities.
Nick Smith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I warmly welcome the statement on ending violence against women and girls? And can the Minister please tell us more about how she will support the power of the third sector? Organisations like the Phoenix Domestic Abuse Services in Blaenau Gwent will always deserve a helping hand.
Minister.
I thank the honourable gentleman, and what I would say is, you know, again, poacher come gamekeeper, that making sure that the voluntary sector are well placed to deliver much of what is in this strategy, not just the classic victim support models of funding either nationally or locally that have previously gone on, but there is going to be new opportunities with new different schemes, whether that's in our employment services, whether that's in our health services, and I absolutely want to make sure that where those are being operated locally, that voluntary sector agencies have the capacity to make sure that they are part of that.
Kirsty Blackman.
Deputy Speaker, the Minister was on Radio 4 this morning. Can I back the comments that she made on public health and the effectiveness of that? I agree it is really important that we need to have a public health campaign on this. Women for Refugee Women have surveyed NRPF women in the asylum system and found that 38% of them have stayed in an abusive relationship because of their inability to access public funds. 38% of those then went on to be raped. Will the Minister give us some information on whether the Government will agree to fully implement the Istanbul Convention, including Article 59, to afford real protection to all women?
I thank the Honourable Lady, and throughout this process she gives me the opportunity to say that many members from across the House have been to see me about various issues and the importance of this in their own areas, and so I thank her for that. What I will say is that the issue of migrant women is definitely tackled within the strategy, but what I want to stand at this dispatch box and say is that women with no recourse to public funds, the government funds specialist provision so that they can escape, and this government has increased the funding that has gone to that, and it doesn't matter what visa type they have, they can access that funding. And what I will also say is that I think that one of the things that actually, funnily enough, is included in parts of the Istanbul Convention is the issue of the firewall between police and support services. That I'm very pleased to say that is in the strategy, and we will be looking to implement that as soon as possible.
Rushanara Ali.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I want to commend my honourable friend for her tireless work in tackling violence against women and girls. Madam Deputy Speaker, I know from my own experience of being stalked for many years and having secured a restraining order for 12 years, that restraining orders, when they're breached, can be very difficult to enforce unless the police and CPS work closely together. Many women up and down the country, when their lives are at risk, find that really challenging. Can my honourable friend say more about what work will be done between the police and the CPS and other support services to make sure restraining orders are enforced, and when they are breached, action is taken to protect women and girls? Minister.
I thank the Honourable Lady, and I want to thank her for her support in the development of this strategy as well. One of the proudest things to stand up here and say is the advancement in refuge funding, and she took no small part in pushing for that, and she deserves every thanks in the world, and probably not just because she is a brilliant Member of Parliament, because of her own experiences, which too many of us in this House share. With regard to protection orders, there needs to be a piece of work that is done across the board to look at exactly how protection orders work, but actually I think that restraining orders, as she says, although I'm about to go to court for somebody who's breached one of mine, so people can be taken, have action taken, but domestic abuse protection orders and stalking protection orders are, in my view, considerably better tools and should be used more widely, and the strategy is very clear on that.
Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I welcome this strategy. The Minister will well know that children from homes where domestic violence is prevalent are all too often conditioned to believe that that's the normal way a relationship operates. So, particularly in changes to the national curriculum, will she ensure that teachers encourage children to come forward with examples of what has happened both at home and potentially elsewhere in their families, so that we can actually deal with this where it starts, in the home?
Minister.
I thank the honourable gentleman, and he is absolutely right. And if you were to speak to almost all victims of domestic abuse in the country who have interacted with children's social care, for example, you would know that there was a need for a new strategy. And in the strategy, the Family First, there is £500 million for the Family First piloting across the country that seeks to do exactly what he is talking about making sure that domestic abuse is dealt with through early intervention. Absolutely, children will not only be encouraged, but we have also, it is now a statutory duty that where children are involved in any domestic abuse incident where they are in the house, that schools are informed, and we will give tools to the schools to know what to do in those circumstances.
Lizzie Collins.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And firstly, I was a bit surprised to hear that the Shadow Minister thinks that our culture understands consent, bodily autonomy, misogyny and violence against women and girls. Given how every day women see violations of their bodies, I just don't think that's true of our culture at all. Madam Deputy Speaker, I have an 11-year-old son, and I worry about the violent and misogynistic material that boys and young men can be exposed to and the potential there for radicalisation. Can the Minister assure me that the prevention will start at a sufficiently young age for boys and that every boy will have access to this preventative work?
Steph.
I thank the honourable lady, and you know, it is compulsory. And the new curriculum is from the age of 4 until 16, so and that is compulsory within schools to be done in with age appropriateness. What we will create through this new funding is a series of interventions where people are worried if a kid, for example, is sharing images, or young people are reporting abuses within their own relationships, that there is somewhere where schools can send people for interventions, and absolutely, as a mother of a son as she is, it will be age appropriate and across the board.
Freya Hophouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I was a secondary school teacher, language teacher, before I came here and had to deliver relationship lessons. I too raised 2 women and 2 men. And I wasn't exactly uncomfortable around young people, but I felt uncomfortable teaching those lessons. And it seems I'm not alone. About half of secondary school teachers don't feel comfortable to deliver these lessons. And I know the strategy is providing training for teachers, but is it realistic to expect that in a busy school day with lots of other stuff, training, yet another bit of training will really result into those outcomes? Should we not have a professional in each school to deliver these lessons?
I thank the honourable lady. As somebody who was one of those professionals who used to go into schools, I couldn't agree with her more. And as somebody, I also went to the same school as the Home Secretary, and so in the building of the strategy, we kept talking about which of our teachers we wouldn't have wanted to talk to this about. This has been quite amusing. I'm going to say, no offence to the teachers in the 90s at our school, but not many of them were coming out well, that we would want to talk to them about consent or pornography or other things. So actually what is being announced today is the use of specialists to go, I think eventually the point is that teachers have to be comfortable with this, and I think that my kids' teachers are more than mine were, if I'm honest, but I think that there has to be a development towards that.
Emily Darlington.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. First of all, can I say a huge thank you to the Safeguarding Minister and the Victims Minister. I was really struggling not to get over-emotional as she was making her speech because, quite frankly, many of us have come to this place in order to make a change for the women and girls in our lives and in our constituencies. This is an absolute watershed moment, and for us this is a chance for us all to take those individual actions, bringing together those good men and good women across our constituency to speak out and speak for the kind of society we want. If this is to be truly successful, it will have to increase confidence of victims. In which case we may see numbers rise. For me, that will be an indicator of success of this strategy. But one of the ways to increase confidence is to make sure, no matter how profile you are as a self-declared misogynist, that you are held to account and brought back to this country to face criminal charges that are here. Does she agree with me that this government should be doing all it can to make sure, pursue every single rapist, abuser, perpetrator, stalker, and that will be the only way to make sure that women and girls feel confident in both our police and our court system.
I thank the honourable lady in her diplomatic manner in which she is very, very clearly representing cases within her constituency. High-profile cases are, and I absolutely agree. And it goes to a number of points that, whether it came from the opposition front bench or from herself, is I don't care who you are. I don't care how important you are. I don't care if you ran a big department store. I don't care if you're a movie mogul. I don't care which country you come from. If you do this in our country, we will come for you.
Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I welcome much of this strategy, and I know it's a personal achievement for the Minister. Anybody who's spoken to a woman who recounts being attacked by her husband or her boyfriend, unsure whether she is going to leave the room alive, knows that this country still fails to tackle violence against women and to take it seriously. I just want to ask about a couple of areas where we know the state has had a blind spot in recent years. Can she say very clearly that the crimes of the rape gangs were racially and religiously aggravated and should be punished as such? And can she agree with me that if there's any law that prevents us deporting any foreign sex criminal or rapist, including the Human Rights Act, we should scrap it?
Minister.
I thank the honourable gentleman, and no doubt in his tenure working for Baroness May was heavily involved in some of this work, so I suppose I shall thank him for that as well, for some of the things that he did in that time. What I cannot say, and what I will not do from this dispatch box, is affect any case by saying that any case is aggravated by one thing or another. I am very proud that this government will aggravate on the basis of grooming for the first time, that will make become an aggravated offence. But on individual cases, I cannot say without seeing all of the evidence. But what I know from my years of working with grooming gang victims is that there is absolutely no doubt about issues of that have been talked about, and as the Home Secretary has said, where women were targeted for being white working class girls. That is absolutely, I have seen it with my own eyes. And I will not scrap the European Human Rights Bill, but we don't need to deport sex offenders. We should have been doing it for a lot longer.
Amanda Martin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I want to pay tribute to the Minister for her statement and for hers and the Victim Minister's hard work for what has been a truly cross-government effort to leave Vawg offenders nowhere to hide. For far too long and far too often, justice for victims of domestic abuse must be sought by parents like Sharon Holland and groups like Project Resist because the system let their daughters down. Tragically, Madam Deputy Speaker, this strategy is too late for two young women from Portsmouth, Chloe Holland and Skye Nichols, who were driven to take their own lives because of coercive control from vile partner perpetrators. Can the Minister explain how the new Vawg strategy will ensure that these deaths are recognised for what they are, manslaughter, and how it will tackle systematic institutional failings and support our third sector to prevent future tragedies?
Minister. I absolutely agree with the Honourable Lady and want to pay tribute to Sharon Holland, a woman I've met a number of times who campaigns fiercely on behalf of her daughter Chloe. Suicide is a fundamental part of the strategy with regard to how we end domestic-related deaths and femicide, and to call it what it is, that is what it is femicide. So a number of different things appear in the strategy, and whether that is around the risk assessment and how well our risk assessments for domestic abuse look for issues of mental ill health. Often they are looking for incidences of homicide rather than suicide, and the issue of manslaughter, my honourable friend the Victims Minister empowered the Law Commission to undertake the review that looks at the exact thing, and we await their findings.
Caroline Burden.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Firstly, I welcome this strategy, and I would like to commend the Minister for her tireless work on supporting victims and trying to reduce violence against women and girls. And I welcome the cross-governmental approach and the focus on prevention and public health promotion. We know that boys as young as 9 or 10 are being spoon-fed hardcore violent pornography on social media, even when they're not looking for it. Access to this type of content leads to violent sexual acts being normalised and the way they view relationships with women becoming warped. Now, the head of a boys' school that has completely banned mobile phones from their estate has spoken powerfully to me about the effect of being able to have conversations with boys before they start seeing this content online. And while schools are part of the answer, asking teachers to combat the tidal wave of indoctrination, radicalisation and normalisation that these algorithms is causing is unrealistic. The misogynistic, violent attitudes must be stopped at source. So as part of this work, what action will the government take to ensure social media companies comply with the Online Safety Act, make Ofcom guidance statutory, and push her colleagues across government to legislate to get smartphones and their misogynistic content out of our schools?
Minister.
Thank you. A 9-year-old looking at any pornography on any social media site or any site in the UK is illegal. And if there are instances of that, then they should be reported. We have seen a case recently where a pornography site did not have age verification. They were by Ofcom fined £1 million and then put age verification, but they will be blocked from being able to be seen in the UK if that is the case. So that is already the case. Now, it's going to take time, but I asked the Honourable Lady to get her schools to report those particular issues, and we will raise them absolutely with Ofcom. I also think it's important to say that misogyny existed before the internet as well. That tackling misogyny is something that has had to be done for quite a long time. I absolutely agree with her that we need to support teachers in how what young people are seeing inside and outside of school, and the strategy absolutely deals with that.
Gurinder Singh Jossan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I first of all thank the Minister and all those in government who worked so hard to bring this strategy. Whilst the Shadow Minister, through her rhetoric, does her best to demonise whole communities, the Minister is right to recognise abuse occurs in all communities. However, the Minister will be aware of the need to be sensitive to cultural differences experienced by women from different communities and girls from different communities. The Minister has already recognised the value of by and for organisations working to provide culturally sensitive support for women and girls, and I trust that support for by and for organisations will continue. But one area where progress needs to be made is in relation to honour-based abuse. So will the Minister commit to support calls from Karma Nirvana and around 60 other organisations, including Sikh Women's Aid, for a statutory definition of honour-based abuse, to recognise honour as an aggravating factor in criminal sentencing, and to require multi-agency guidance to identify and respond to honour-based abuse?
I am very happy to say that the making a statutory definition of honour-based abuse and working with the organisations that he has identified on that statutory guidance is very much in the strategy. I am very proud to do that, because absolutely we do need to have cultural sensitivities, but within the services that we provide, and we need to listen to the voices of the women in those services. It's an honour to work with those organisations, and I will continue.
Ben Oxyjecti.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I just wanted to address another aspect of this strategy, and specifically how it relates to male survivors of crimes considered to be violence against women and girls. My 10-minute rule bill earlier in the year called for a dedicated strategy to tackle interpersonal abuse and violence against men and boys, so that male survivors of rape, sexual assault, domestic abuse, forced marriage and honour-based violence receive the justice and support they deserve. I recently met with the Minister, and I thank her for her time. Discussions were very positive, I felt. I've also spoken to the Victims Minister about how to shape the strategy to support male survivors. So could you just outline what provisions are included to support male survivors in this strategy, and whether a dedicated strategy to help male survivors be published next year?
I thank the Honourable Gentleman. I really thank him for his approach on this, and to working collectively with us. There is a specific statement that goes alongside the strategy that is specifically targeted at men and boys, that has some specific support services and things that are and policy that is for male survivors. But of course, anything that is in the strategy, any of the legislation, any of the support services, they are and the commissioning, it is also for men and boys who are victims of this. But as he and I said, what we actually need is a piece of work done to see we can't just paste what women have also always used onto men. And so at the Men and Boys Summit that my honourable friend, the Victims Minister, which I'm sure he will be able to be part of, we will be looking at exactly what that is, and that will be early in the new year.
Kevin Bonavia.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I add my own personal tribute to the Minister? This is a huge achievement for her today, and it is not just for her. She is doing it on behalf of all women and girls in this country. Now, in her statement, she said we all have a role to play. That's individuals and organisations across this country. Now, in Stevenage, she will recall we have an amazing charity called Survivors Against Domestic Abuse. And one of the challenges they face is that many victims there keep going back and back again because the justice system isn't strong enough for them. So I'm sure that SADA will welcome domestic abuse protection orders, and will the Minister explain to SADA and other organisations how this government will help them provide that support to women and girls who need it?
I thank the honourable gentleman, and organisations like SADA are absolutely vitally important both in how we roll out new perpetrator schemes, so that it isn't those victims who have to do the work, and actually it is offender management of their perpetrators with support alongside them. There are lots of new national schemes that will be rolled out as part of this strategy over the next 3 years, and I would very much welcome and will work with all the organisations across the country to get that right in local areas.
Josh Babarinder.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And really from the bottom of my heart, I sincerely congratulate the Minister, as well as the Minister for Victims, for all the work that they've put in to making this happen, working with victims, survivors and the sector across the country. I was proud to work with them both to help secure the domestic abuse identifier that is in the Section 6 of the Sentencing Bill, which will enable us to know how many domestic abusers there are in prison and in the country at any given time and what their reoffending rate is. I'm keen to understand from the Minister when she expects that information and that data to go online, how she expects to use that data to help monitor the impact and progress of this Vawg strategy, and what the government will do to help measure the impact of it on people before, retrospectively, this identifier was brought in.
The honourable gentleman makes a really good point, and it was a genuine pleasure. I will always say that, but it was a genuine pleasure to work with him on it, and I really thank him for his leadership in that space. Obviously, we have to wait for the sentencing bill to pass, and all of that. But look, what I expect to happen because of that is that it's going to throw up huge amounts of data. This is going to be incredibly helpful, and exactly what data we want to collect and look at as part of that, I think it will take a bit of time. But it can start to happen. I think as soon as the sentencing bill passes, and that would certainly be our ambition.
Anna Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I would like to thank my honourable friend for her leadership and determination in bringing forward this ambitious strategy. I really welcome the focus on prevention and particularly reducing online harm for young people, something that the Public Accounts Committee raised in its report, of which I'm a member. Bradford Rape Crisis and Staying Put provide vital support to women and girls in my Shipley constituency who've been victims of violence against women and girls, and I hugely welcome, I think, the £1 billion, if I heard right, in the statement that's going to be invested in victim support and safe refuge. Will the Minister explain how these funds will help victims of domestic abuse in my Shipley constituency to get support and a safe place to call home?
I thank the honourable lady. With regard to her rape crisis, there is literally a specific amount of uplift that will come to the ring-fenced budget that goes to rape crises in the country. I think Rape Crisis England and Wales asked for a 15% uplift, and not from, funnily enough, from health service funding, which is the cultural change that I am talking about, making it their business. We expect to see those uplifts, so that they will hopefully benefit from that. With regard to domestic abuse, the extra, compared to under the previous government, the £130 million a year in refuge and housing support and the support that sits around that, there will be over the 3 years 109 million extra, and I hope that the commissioning process, which we will redesign to make better and over a longer period of time rather than doing it every year, that her organisations will be able to access.
Richard Farr.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. A recent Ofsted inspection of children's services in Devon found that they, quote, share a determination to improve services for care leavers. How will the new strategy to end violence against women and girls pay particular attention to preventing harms to care leavers, to care experienced people, and how will it build on improving practice that we see in local authorities, such as in Devon?
Look, it is absolutely a vital part of this puzzle, and working with the Children's Minister in the Department for Education on like we said, the family first part of this strategy, the bit of the strategy that is about children's social care. Care leavers, if people often talking about grooming gangs, and you cannot talk about grooming gangs without talking about care experienced children as well, and the interactions of those. It is a vitally important part of the puzzle to get right, and the government also has a children in care strategy that it will work towards that, and I sit on the board of that.
Chris Webb.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I know in my time as a former Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner that there's been a growing trend in violent patterns for younger people, especially young boys in Blackpool and beyond. So can the Minister set out the plans to engage with young people, particularly young boys and men, to tackle this?
Minister.
I thank the honourable gentleman. I think that we have not done anywhere near enough to engage with young men and boys about their feelings about this, and to devise a system that is best for them. I mean, other than saying 6, 7 like that, what do I know about what it's like to be a teenage boy? Not even my children are teenagers anymore. And so, of course, what we will test a number of models, and that will have to be done in concert with young people.
Tracy Gilbert.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I welcome this strategy and thank my honourable friends and the ministerial team for their tireless work in tackling violence against women and girls. To meet the government's targets of cutting violence in half, we must end the demand for commercial sexual exploitation, whether that be in pornography or prostitution. Can my honourable friend outline what steps the strategy will take across government departments to eradicate this demand?
I thank the honourable lady, and I think she will be pleased about the government action that the strategy proposes with regard to as she quite rightly points out, some of the commercial sexual exploitation that occurs within pornography, and based on Baroness Burton's review, I'm sure she will be pleased to hear, but actually much more broadly, the real need to properly integrate the idea of adult sexual exploitation into what we consider as violence against women and girls, and to properly have robust measures to deal with that is a fundamental part of changing that, and that includes some of the terrible commercial sexual exploitation.
And the final question, Mark Seward.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the strategy set out by the Minister today. I commend her and everyone around her for their tireless work to get to this point, often lifelong work too. When I speak with the charitable sector, third sector organisations like Leeds Women's Aid in my constituency, they've worked in this space for years, and one of the things they keep telling me is that the funding period for grants are often far too short, come up for review far too frequently. Now, factoring in the cost of applying for these grants, as well as the staff time that they spend applying, they tell me that long-term strategic decision-making within their own organisations becomes really, really difficult. So can the Minister assure them that the strategy will address this common challenge?
As a previous Women's Aid alumni, I can absolutely, and that one of the strongest things that came from the sector, especially the domestic abuse sector, is how crackers it is that you have to apply for your funding every year. So obviously we can't commit funding for longer periods than comprehensive spending reviews, but we are committing to long-term funding going out of our door into that door under a set of standards and commissioning models that we in the government will work to, because there's also quite a lot of complaints about localised commissioning as well, and that is a fundamental way of allowing those organisations to grow because they can breathe again.
And that concludes the statement, and I'll allow for the front benches to quickly swap over to start the next statement.